So what I was going to say is this is going to be pretty informal. I don't really like watching people click through PowerPoint slides, so I'm not going to put you through that. I'm really just going to be talking through tips and tricks and some, you know, ideas based on my past experience, and just having a conversation with you guys about that and the overall topic of selling and maximizing your profits in a seller's market. There's going to be a few times that I ask your thoughts and opinions on things. I would love for this to be engaging for everyone. So if you want to chime in, either unmute yourself or type in the chat. That way we can just kind of keep it a little bit more upbeat. For the sake of time and flow, if you have any questions on anything I'm talking about, go ahead and just drop that in the chat and we'll address everything at the end. And then, as I mentioned, anyone who's joining today and provides feedback on the link that I put in the chat is going to get a free treat from Paloma's Market on Bridge Street. So there's a few basic principles that are behind most of the advice in this presentation. So what I like to do is kind of lay out those basic principles before jumping into the tips. So first thing is, this whole presentation is based on the premise that we're in a seller's market. But who actually knows what a seller's market is? Show of hands. Or if you want to drop in the chat what you think a seller's market means. And bonus points if you know how it's measured.
If we know what?
If you know how you measure whether or not you're in a seller's market.
Whoa.
I come from an engineering background, so that was exciting to me to know that there was an actual metric for that. And give me a couple seconds. Right. So Loretta, you're right. So when there's not many houses in the market and prices going up can be a result of that. Selling quickly can also be a result of that. The basic definition of a seller's market is when there's more demand than there is supply. So more buyers than there are sellers, or more buyers than there are homes listed for sale. The actual way to measure that is a metric called months supply inventory, or MSI. And that tells you in a given, it's based on how quickly homes are selling and the number of homes available for sale. So based on those two numbers, they can determine if you have enough inventory to last 1 month, 2 months, all the way to 12 months, or even longer. Basically how long it would take a property to sell in this market. So with an MSI of 5 to 7 months, you're in a balanced market. Anything greater than 7 months, so if it's taking more than 7 months to sell, or if the estimated time to sell is more than 7 months, you're in a buyer's market. And if the MSI is less than 5 months, you're in a seller's market. I shouldn't say the time it takes to sell. That I don't mean one home. I mean it's the ratio of number of homes available for sale divided by homes sold per month. So it's a whole calculation, but it's measured in months supply of inventory. So that's the number to keep in mind. So, like I said, anything less than 5 months supply inventory, you're in a seller's market. So who can guess what the MSI is currently in the Phoenixville area? We know we're in a seller's market, so we know it's below 5. What do we think?
1.
Yeah. So we're at about 1.5 months supply inventory, which means we're not just in a seller's market, but we are in an extreme seller's market. And there have been times in the past year that it's gone below 1. So that, yeah, right. So that's what is really making this feel like, wow, we are definitely in seller's market. We don't know if there's an end in sight to that. And what's really putting the pinch on things. And we'll get into why that drives prices up and all that later. So why are we in a seller's market? Does anyone have any ideas?
People are bored with their homes.
That's part of it for sure. So actually, before the pandemic, we were already in the seller's market, and we have had low month supply inventory, especially in this area, for a few years. but it wasn't quite as intense as it is now. The reason for it before was interest rates were relatively low, which increases people's buying power. They say, wow, I can afford, you know, a $300 house instead of a $250 house. So it opens up what people can buy and they become more interested in buying. There's also a strong decrease in new home construction sales after the crash in 2009. So people building new construction really stopped doing that for a long time. And it's really just starting to ramp back up. That plus an improving economy, millennials coming of age, boomers aging in place instead of downsizing or going to assisted living, things like that. That really started to put a crunch on the available inventory and also made people more, in combination with making people more motivated to buy. Loretta, I see you said you think everyone who owns a home would quickly put their house on the market. There are very few places people can afford to purchase. Right, so a challenge of the seller's market is you may benefit when you sell, but it can be challenging to then go and buy in the same market. So the people really benefiting are people who are downsizing because you've got that extra cash to put down. So then, like I said, we were kind of already in a seller's market, and then the pandemic really threw things into overdrive because, as Karen mentioned, people were realizing that their current location or space isn't right for them. They either need more space or just a different use of space, or they don't need to be as close to their job anymore. Any sort of number of reasons really got people thinking, I don't want to live here anymore. Interest rates went even lower. They hit historic lows a couple months ago. They're starting to tick back up, but they're still pretty low, historically speaking. And the people who didn't lose their jobs during the pandemic are doing really well financially, and for last year haven't really been spending money on anything. So the spending power went up, the inventory remains low, and that's how we find ourselves where we're at today.
What are the interest rates currently?
Right, last I checked, we were looking around like 3.3%.
Okay.
And then the lowest I saw them go was like high twos, mid to high twos. So we're still looking pretty good as far as interest rates go. And as you can imagine, that increases what you can afford to buy. So, all right, so then we touched on this a little bit, but what happens when you're in a seller's market? So when demand is high and supply is low, you have a lot of buyers looking at the same pool of relatively few homes. So what that does is that creates a competitive situation. And when buyers are competing with each other for the same home, exactly, bidding war. So they start to think of ways that they can beat out the competition. What's the most obvious way? Well, I'll pay more for the house, right? But there's actually, that only goes so far, or people are hesitant to go, crazy with the price. So there is a limit to what people are willing to pay for a home, right? So then they start to get creative in other ways, and they start changing the terms of the contract. And we'll get into what terms mean, but generally speaking, price and terms get more and more favorable for the seller, the more desirable a home is, and the more buyers that are bidding on it. Perks thrown in, right? And one of the things also is it increases the speed at which things are selling, right? Because buyers know there's not a lot out there. As soon as they see something out there, they say, well, I want to be the first one there. I want to, really get my foot in the door. So that creates a really condensed period where a lot of people are looking and a lot of people are competing. And it's great for sellers. It's stressful, but it's great. However, while demand is high, that doesn't mean that buyers are all desperate for anything. Buyers still have needs and wants. Some they may be willing to be flexible on, but generally, school district, location, size of home, some amenities, condition, those are all still in buyer's consideration. So as you can imagine, homes that are in a more desirable location, which is subjective, but nonetheless, in a location where many people desire, in great condition, is going to do much better than a home that needs a lot of work or is on, on a major highway or something like that. So, I think a lot of sellers get excited, oh, we're in a seller's market. But the fact of the matter is a home in poor condition or in an undesirable location is still going to sell for less than a home in great condition that shows really well. So that's, again, just the basic principle that we want to keep in mind. And that is, the premise of what a lot I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so some more basic principles. So what makes a house sell? In general, it's the home with the best value. So that means the price matches what they're getting for it, right? And what makes the buyer buy? Right now, fear of loss is driving a lot of people's decisions to buy. There's very little on the market. If they see something that meets 80% of their needs, the fear of losing that for something that only meets 70% of their needs is very real. So those are basic principles that, again, we want to keep in mind when we're strategizing on how to put our listings in the best position possible. So what are some factors that impact value or perceived value of a home? Do you guys have any ideas? We talked about location. We talked about what else?
School district.
For some. Now, not everybody has children, so not everybody, is concerned about that, but that is something that goes into play. So we'll lump that into location. Obviously, the price affects the value, or is inherently part of the value. The condition, also the competition. If there's another house that is equal in all other aspects, but it's priced lower, better condition, that's going to affect the value of your home. And then timing, going into the school thing, if you're wanting to close before the next school year, if you're in a time period when people are looking versus they're not. Right now, everyone's looking all the time, but there are still some timing considerations to be had. So it's location, price, condition, competition, timing. So having many or all of those aspects right drives up interest and drives up competition. And then competition leads to fear of loss, and that gets people to bid and gets people to bid higher and higher until you make the best sale possible. Okay, so what are some negative things that can impact sellers? So a lot of things people don't think about are the buyer's actual ability to purchase the house. As excited as someone can get and as great of an offer they can put in, it is important to know whether or not that buyer actually has the capability to purchase. The buyer's agent and their lender being solid and having a solid understanding of the process and the risks associated with the offer that they're making. And then there's the fact that while you are marketing your property, you have the largest pool, you have a lot of competition, but once you're under contract, you have a lot less leverage than you did when you were on the market. So that's something to keep in mind as you're preparing to sell, is that your maximum point of leverage is before and right when the property hits the market, and then after that you lose a significant amount of leverage. And then kind of going with that, any contingencies that are on an offer will lead to future negotiations. So again, in a point where you have less leverage, where it's just you and one other buyer, any contingencies that you have will be a point of future negotiation. So again, we want to keep all these basic principles in mind as we're going through, what to do when you're listing your home. So with that said, following those basic principles, the things I'm going to be talking about today are staging, pricing, timing, marketing, negotiations, or bulletproofing your transaction. And if people are interested, selling and buying at the same time. And if anyone had it in their head that they wanted to sell without an agent, I can go in depth as to why I don't think that's the best idea in this market. So what this presentation is, it's how to maximize a profit on the sale of your home. It's what you can do as I mentioned in the description, how to be an active participant in the sale of your home, to support what the efforts that your realtor is making to sell your home, how to avoid common pitfalls, understanding buyer psychology and current market conditions and using them to your advantage, how to get what the best terms are for you, how to figure that out, and then how to get them. And then, as I mentioned, how to bulletproof your transaction. What this presentation is not is how to sell your property without a realtor. I'm a realtor, I'm not going to encourage that. And I'm going to explain to you why I don't think it's in your best interest either. It's not how to do your realtor's job for them. These are all things, just things for you to know and for you to do while your realtor is doing what they're doing. And it's also not how to do nothing and make the same amount as a listing that has a lot more to offer. Okay. So, do we have any questions before I start?
On TV, I've seen 2% for realtors for the commissions. Is that something you would recommend or not recommend, or is that, am I talking to the wrong person on that?
Oh, well, everything is negotiable in real estate. What I will say is you get what you pay for, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And if you want to have a discussion about it offline, I'm happy to do that as well. So let's start with staging. That's a topic that both Karen and Loretta seem interested in. So as I was saying, staging, it is critically important. Buyers make split-second decisions online. 90% of buyers are finding their homes online. And it's, even though it kind of goes against what you would think, even though buyers are desperate for homes and all this crazy stuff is going on, they're still quite picky. So if a listing doesn't capture their attention in the first 2 pictures or in the first couple seconds of their first impression, they might not even come see it. It's almost like, because it's such a competitive market, buyers don't want to bother with something that they're not excited about, if that makes any sense. So staging is really important. But it doesn't always mean hiring a company to put fancy furniture in, although it can mean that. So when I say staging, what I mean is basically putting your listing in the best possible light, showing as nicely as it can so that it's captured well in photos. And so when people come see it, they are noticing the good aspects of the home and not distracted by things that don't have anything to do with the home. A really good example is outdated furniture. People will still get really distracted by that, even though it has nothing to do with the sale, with the home that they're buying. They know the furniture is not coming with them, yet their eye is drawn to that, and it creates a negative image in their head. So with that, some main components of staging, the number one thing, believe it or not, is decluttering. What I tell people is, you're going to be moving anyway. You're going to be deciding what to take with you and what to give away, what to pack that you aren't going to need until you move into your new home, and what to leave out because you have an immediate need for it. So why not do that before you list your home, to present your home in the best possible light, to keep people from being distracted by your stuff and focus on your listing. So that's I'm really, really big on decluttering before listing and before photographs. A good deep cleaning goes a long way. You've lived in the home for how many years? It's probably not something you do that often. You'd be surprised how much gets captured in photos or people notice when they're walking through the property. So deep cleaning is well worth it. You want to make any repairs on things that are obvious defects. In this market, you can sell a home with obvious defects, but again, this presentation is about maximizing your profits. So if you have something that's obvious, what we call a buyer objection, something that a buyer is going to walk in and see and say, oh, I don't like that, or I'm concerned about that, or that could be another issue presenting itself. A good example is a stain in a ceiling. You don't want to show a house with a stain in the ceiling because what are people going to think? What is that from? Was it fixed? Is there mold there? So things like that. So just walk through your house as though you're a buyer and pick out the things that you would pick out if you were them. A good coat of paint goes a long way. People are really reluctant to paint before listing, but it goes a long way. So freshening up walls, flooring if you can, landscaping, all goes a really long way to making that great first impression. And like I said, removing any buyer objections. So any major issues, anything that you think people would turn their nose up, that's relatively easy to fix, just try to do it. And then increasing your curb appeal, like Loretta mentioned, that definitely helps. And then you can go deeper into either rearranging furniture or swapping out for staged furniture, if that makes sense. And I'm sure you've heard this one before, taking out extremely personal items. So, taking the pictures off the wall that are of you and your family. People don't want to see that your family, they want to see their families or no families on the wall, right? They want to picture it as their home. So removing personal items is a big one. And then, if you're wondering whether or not it's worth it to hire a staging company, it really depends on the property. And it really depends on how much that staged furniture is going to help people envision how they use the space, or, if you've got a vacant listing and it's kind of, it maybe would be hard to picture, okay, where would you put a couch or, something like that, then it's worth it for staged furniture. But a lot of times you can really get by rearranging your own furniture or just taking stuff out. But again, it's case by case. So what I'll leave you with for staging is you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So I'm really big on staging in that aspect in terms of putting in the best light possible beforehand. And then just some little tips, you want to highlight how rooms and spaces are used in your staging and in your arrangement of furniture. Highlight the lifestyle aspects of the home. If this is your favorite room in the house, try to lead people there in a way that's clear. That couch or that love seat by the window, it calls your attention. It says, I want to sit there. I want to get that sunlight, things like that. Try to attract the eye to the room's best features and get rid of things that detract from the best features. So if you have beautiful hardwood floors, but you have a big rug covering it, think about that. Do you want to show off the rug that you're taking with you, or do you want to show off the hardwood floors? And then, as much as I talk about removing personal items, if you have your house decorated in a way that really fits with the overall vibe, so if it's a luxury listing and you've got a lot of great luxury pieces, accent pieces and things like that, leave it, because that gives off that luxury vibe. If you have a very charming cottage and you've got plants that really add to that vibe or something like that, then leave it. So again, it's case by case, but the general rule of thumb is if it adds to that feeling that you want people to get when they walk in, then leave it. So that's what I would say about staging. And again, case by case, what a realtor will do is they'll walk through your home and they'll give you a really specific list of what you can or should do before listing. All right, so pricing. Pricing is another critically important feature. Yes, it's a seller's market. Yes, people are offering over asking, but did you ever stop to ask yourself, how do you determine what asking price is? Does it matter if you got over asking if you were asking for too little? Or does it matter if you got below asking if you were asking for too much to begin with? So at the end of the day, especially in this type of market, the market is going to tell you what your house is worth. It's not what you owe. It's not how much you want to net. It's not how much Zillow says that it's worth. It's really what buyers feel is the right value for the home. So what's happening right now is if that something is priced properly, and by properly, I mean the realtor looked at the comparable properties, saw what they sold for, maybe marked it up a little because it's a seller's market and we know we can flex a little bit there. That signals buyers that this house is the right value for its condition because it's what other homes sold for, right? But then what happens, of course, is so many people feel that that's a good value and they come see it and they love it. They say, well, it's such a good value, I want to buy it. How do I beat other buyers? I offer more than asking price. So that's what getting over asking price really means. It really is meaningless if you underpriced your home, and it's really meaningless if you overpriced your home. It's really about figuring out what the comparable home prices are saying and fitting in that range to bring the buyers in. Improper pricing can really hurt you in the long run. It can, right now in the internet age, when everyone's searching for homes online, people generally search in a price band. So they say, I'm looking between this price and this price. And if your home is $1 outside of that range, you're not even going to be in their inbox. So it's important to keep that in mind, to keep, probably try to straddle different ranges if you can. So none of this $499.99, because that's not going to do you any good. If you're at 500, you're in between two price bands, right? But so for one, it'll keep you out of people's, inbox if you price too high. And like I said, with all of the competition, people are sort of building in the fact that they have to pay over asking into their assessment of a home. So many buyers that have been in this market for long enough know that if a house is listed for 500, I better be ready to offer 530, 540, who knows, depending on where you're at. So if you're already priced at the top of that, that might scare people away. And they say, oh, well, I would maybe pay 550, but I wouldn't pay 6. So I'm not even gonna go see it. So it's just important to keep that buyer psychology in mind and really try to stay with the comparables, push it a little bit if you want to, but really try to stay there so that you're attracting the largest pool and creating that competitive situation. Because if not, it can really backfire. So if you overprice your home by a little, then buyers can make an offer that is lower, but still within the correct value. So the thing is, in this market, people aren't offering below asking price because they know that they're probably not going to get the home. Buyers in this market know that to be competitive with other offers, they have to offer over asking price. But if the asking price is already overpriced compared to other properties, they're not going to offer anything. They're just going to say it's not worth my time. So it can really backfire to overprice even in the seller's market. More probably, especially in a seller's market. So what does proper pricing mean? Simply put, it's the price that buyers are likely to pay for that home in that location in that condition based on comparable home sales. And also based on market conditions. So if we were in a buyer's market, this would be a little bit different of a conversation. You would probably want to price a little bit below comparables so that you're not chasing the market. In this market, you can push a little bit above comparables, but you still want to use comparables as your guide to understand what buyers are willing to pay for that type of home in that place, in that condition. Does that make sense, everyone? So why wouldn't you make an offer below listing? So let me try to put you in the mind of a buyer right now. If I'm a buyer in Phoenixville in the $300 to $500 price range, if I've been looking for more than a week, I know that I'm not going to get an offer accepted below asking price. It's just not going to happen. And in fact, I know that I may have offered over asking price and still not gotten my offer accepted. Putting in an offer is a pretty time-consuming process. It's not just an email. It's basically writing up a whole contract. And so buyers aren't wanting to waste their time putting in offers that they know aren't going to get accepted. Does that make sense? If not, maybe we can address it at the end.
Can I ask a question? We have a 2-family unit, first floor and a second floor. Each unit is 1 bedroom. It was a single family house. It can very easily be turned back into a single family house. Which way should we advertise it?
Where is it located?
Well, it's not here. It's now near Hershey.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not an expert in that market, so I couldn't tell you. Single family homes are in more demand right now than multifamily homes, but there is a significant market for especially duplexes. So it really, we would have to talk about that offline because it's 2 completely different ways of marketing and 2 completely ways of assessing the value of the home. One is more for investors, and so you're wanting to look at it from an investor's eyes, whereas one is for a single family, an owner occupant. So you'd want to look at it from their perspective.
Which would bring more money in. Do you have any, is that obvious?
It depends. It's not, it would depend on the house, the location, the size. It depends on a lot of different factors.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so for comparables, what really your realtor is going to be doing this, but they're going to be sitting down with you and going over it. And so it's just important for you to understand what they're looking at. So they're looking at location, school district, also like the type of neighborhood, whether it's, very urban, very walkable, if it's in a neighborhood or it's on a busy street, that type of thing. They're going to try to compare it like with like there. The size, so square footage, number of bedrooms, the size of the lot, the overall condition compared to other properties, and then the condition of major components like the kitchen, the bath, how updated things are, also your roof and your mechanical components, and then any value add features or amenities. So they're going to look at that with your property, and then they're going to pull up as many properties as they can find within a mile or less of your property, and determine with you, how you feel your property compares to these ones that sold in the last. It can be up to a year. That's what appraisers use. But in this market, things are changing so quickly that we really try to keep it within 6 months or maybe even 3 months if you can find enough to support it. Does that all make sense so far? I know we still have some confusion over why wouldn't you make an offer below the listing price? We'll address that at the end. Do you guys have anything else before I move on? Okay, so now we'll talk about timing. So do you guys, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How long do you think people spend preparing their home before they put it on the market?
A month.
What's that?
Just a month.
Month? Okay. Loretta, what do you think? It's very, very variable. So it really depends on the property. It'll depend on the conversation you have really over condition versus the comparables, right? So if it's already really in really good shape and already equal to or exceeds the comparables, and there's not really much for you to do, then I've had people list within a week of meeting with me. If there's a lot of clutter, a lot of things to be done beforehand, it can take several weeks, months. I have people who have been getting ready for 6 months. So it really depends. So there's not really a straight answer to that. What I can tell you for sure is how long things are on the market right now. So what is your guess for when you list a property to when it goes under contract? How long do you think?
3 days.
Yeah, average days on market are 3 days is typical. It's not the average. The average is a little longer than that, but for if it's a good solid listing, priced properly, and it attracts enough buyers, then your serious buyers are going to get in there in the first couple of days. They're going to make their offers, and they're likely to be the best offers that you get. Because again, those are buyers who have been looking, who understand the market, and who are ready to be competitive. Anyone who comes after that, after the 7-day mark, is probably not going to be your more serious buyer, not in this market. And then how long do you guys think it takes between when you get a listing, when you get a contract signed, and when you close on the property? So when you get your buyer and when the buyer actually closes?
A month or two?
Yep. So it can be as short as a few weeks, depending on the contingencies. Average is about 30 to 45 days. One of the terms that we'll talk about later is if you need more time to get ready to move or to find a place to go, that is a big point of leverage that you have right now, is you can ask for a longer contract period, or you can ask for a shorter contract period. So that's another one of the terms that you can kind of initiate buyers to make, or ask buyers to make in your favor. Does that make sense? Okay. So then with timing, so with the property being only on the market for a few days, how do you even get in front of people? How does that work? The key to that is having what's called a coming soon campaign. So that means putting the property in the multiple listing service and advertising it aggressively for anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks without showings, so that you can get it out to as many people as possible, so as many people know about your property as possible, and the hype kind of builds around it before showings begin. That way, like I said, the motivated buyers will schedule their showings for the first couple of days that it's on the market. So that will funnel the most serious buyers into the shortest period of time and drive that competition up. So even though you're only on the market for a couple of days, you can actually use some of that time when you're getting the property ready, and put it in the multiple listing service as coming soon to basically build up momentum. So you're kind of doing double duty. You're getting the property ready and you're marketing it, or your realtor is marketing it.
If you're marketing it, are you putting pictures in then?
So it depends. If it's already picture ready, then yes. If you're preparing it for photos, what we'll do is just take exterior photos, or you do want to try to put something in there that captures attention, because you want people to see it and say, oh, I'm interested in going to see this when it's ready. So you do try to put something in there, but a lot of times one of the things that you're preparing is for photos. So usually it's maybe just like one picture of the front, or if you were able to get like drone photography, anything like that, like of that exterior, then we'll do that. But especially in this market, even just telling people I have a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom in this school district at this price, even without photos right now, people know what they're looking for. And that will be enough to get people, put that on their radar and get their attention, so that they're ready whenever it's listed to make an appointment to see it. And then what we'll do is leave it in coming soon for a couple of days after we have photos. That way people can really get the full picture of things, then put it active. And that's why things are going in 3 days, because people knew about it before it went on the market. Does that make sense?
Right.
They got to understand what it was, how, the specs of it, and even see some pictures. And then they had time to schedule those showings in that, few days. So you got that coming soon period, you got that prep period, the coming soon period, some of that can overlap. And then what you want to do is you want to set a specific date when you're going to be reviewing offers. That makes it clear to everybody, here's your time window to come see it, and this is when I'm going to be making a decision. And then in those first 3 days, or even first 7 days, it's going to be really busy. So what I tell people now is you're gonna basically plan on being out of your home for the entire day, the first few days on market. So if you can get a hotel for the weekend, go visit family, then I highly encourage that, because it is just back to back to back showings. And again, that's the way that you maximize the competition. So it's not an ideal situation for the seller, but in the end, it is. And then generally in this market, if a property was properly marketed, if it was priced correctly, if it's not sold in 7 days, it's probably overpriced. And that's just a simple fact in this market. There's very little chance that if it remains at the same price for longer than 7 days, and it doesn't have an offer already, there's a very low chance that it's ever going to get an offer at the price that you're looking for. Okay, so then marketing. Marketing is one of the biggest things that your realtor is going to be doing for you. So you don't have to worry about too much as far as marketing, but it doesn't hurt to tell everyone you know that you're selling your property. Tell your neighbors, tell your family, tell your friends, because chances are they know someone who's looking, and they'll want to, at least have the inside scoop that something's coming. Your agent will be doing the same. They'll be reaching out to their network of buyers, of agents, of investors, if that's appropriate, and letting them know that there's something coming down the pike. Keep your, stay tuned. You can't show the property until it's listed, but again, it's building that hype. It's letting people know it's coming. And yeah, your agent in that meanwhile, for marketing, should be telling you what you should be doing to stage it, should be helping you with pricing. That really kind of rolls into marketing. They should be connecting you with the proper professionals that if you may need help, getting stuff done at your house, they should be putting yard signage in, taking professional photography, and if it makes sense, drone and video. And then they should be creating a captivating description in the multiple listing service, putting all the information in there that buyers need to make their choice. And then doing that aggressive promoting in the coming soon status. So canvassing or mailing the neighborhood, reaching out to their networks, promoting it in their office, posting it in the multiple listing service, social media, and all of that. So that all goes into marketing. And again, like a lot of that is on your realtor's side of things, but they don't know most of your neighbors. So if you have a good connection with your neighbors, say, hey, do you want to pick your next neighbor? Like tell them to come to my open house, or tell them to, talk to my realtor and schedule a showing as soon as it's on the market. So there's a little bit you can do there to help out. Okay, and then if you've done everything right, priced properly, staged well, marketed aggressively, then in the first few days on market, you should have multiple offers to review and choose from. And so what I want to talk about is the offer review process. So we talked about price, and then we talked about terms. So some of the terms that I would recommend looking at when you're reviewing offers is the settlement date right for you? Is it enough time for you to move out? Is it too much time? Do you want it to be shorter? That's all stuff you can talk about with your realtor. And really that's stuff you can talk about before you even list, and you can encourage buyers to make it for a specific settlement date. You want to look at the deposit amount that the buyers are making. If they're making a very small deposit, earnest money deposit, what they're saying is, I can break this contract at any time and I'm losing very little money. So it's like putting your money where your mouth is, right? So the higher the deposit, the stronger the offer. You want your realtor to be digging into the buyer's financial information as much as they can. There is an actual form that people submit with their offers called buyer's financial information that lists what their salary is, what their debts are, what their assets are. And the buyer should, or the agent should really be looking at that and making a bit of a determination. Is this a strong buyer? Does this person have the ability to actually close on this property? Or maybe are they a little over leveraged and is there a chance that they might not be able to close on the property? And then along with that, the agent should be looking at the buyer's pre-approval letter and potentially even talking to the buyer's lender and having a conversation. Is this a strong buyer? And if there's 14 offers on the table, then that should be reviewed for every offer. So it's more than just price. It's price and terms. Can this buyer actually close on the property? Are they serious? Are they offering what I need or what I'm looking for? And then of course you have the contingencies. So as I mentioned before, any contingency on your contract is an opportunity for the buyer to negotiate once they're already under contract. So all that competition is gone and it's just you and them. So again, that leverage gets shifted a little bit. So what are some of the contingencies that you guys know about that can be on a contract?
Water issues, bugs, roof, siding, I don't know. Plumbing.
Yeah. So you're talking about the inspection contingency, basically. So contingency that says, I have the right to inspect this property, and if something like the roof or something like that comes up, then I have the right to renegotiate the terms of the contract. So I can terminate. I can say, this is too much. I don't want to be here. I can say, this is a lot more than I bargained for. I want you to reduce the sale price. Or I can say, this is fine. I want to continue. So in general, that's what contingencies do. They present an opportunity for the buyer to renegotiate or terminate the contract. So in general, the more contingencies that are on a contract, the more risk there is for a seller. Does that make sense?
Right.
So when you're reviewing offers, you really want to look at the contingencies that are in the offer. So it could be $200,000 over asking price, but if it has 10 different contingencies and another offer doesn't, you want to weigh those things. And then same with if they don't put down a big deposit or a good deposit, if they don't have a strong financial background, those are all things that you want to weigh in addition to the sale price.
Paloma, are most buyers pre-approved at this point?
Yes. So most buyers agents really are not taking buyers to see properties unless they're pre-approved. And the reason for that is because how quickly things are moving. If you go to see a house, you really should be ready to make an offer within a day or two of seeing the house, the same day or the next day of seeing it, right? But if you don't have a pre-approval, then you're submitting an offer where you're saying, I really want to buy this house, but I have no proof that I actually can. And that offer isn't worth the paper that it's written on. So most, if I am listing a property and I get an offer with no pre-approval, I'm probably going to advise my seller that that's not an offer that they would want to take. So I have yet to see an offer that doesn't have a pre-approval. And in addition to pre-approval, a buyer's financial information form, contact information for their lender, and all those things so that you can vet if that buyer actually has the ability to purchase the home.
Does the agent typically do that, or is that the owners?
The realtor does that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll get into that. I see a little bit of a commission question. So we'll get into the things that the realtor does that are more than just listing it and, collecting their paycheck, right? So they're all these things that I've talked about so far, they're guiding you through that. So they're helping you figure out the pricing. They're consulting on the staging. They're helping you figure out the right time to put it as coming soon and then the right time to put it as live. They're helping you determine when you're going to review offers. They're doing all the marketing, things like that. And then they're helping you look at the offers objectively and telling you the pros and cons of every offer. So generally now in this market, when you have 14 offers, offer review is a spreadsheet, and it's here's 1 through 15, here are the prices, here are the contingencies, here are the here's what the buyer makes, here's what they owe, really all laid out so that you can objectively look at each one or look at them at a glance and determine what is going to be the best for you. So what has the least risk, the best terms, and of course the best bottom line for you. So just really quickly, some of the other contingencies that they can have. Financing is a contingency. So if they are if it's a buyer who has to get a mortgage in order to buy a house, that's a contingency on the contract. So they are saying, if I cannot obtain a mortgage, then I don't have to buy this house. And that's why it's so important to vet their finances beforehand. With that, usually if you are getting a mortgage, you have an appraisal contingency. And that says, if this house doesn't appraise for what I'm paying or what I offered, my lender isn't going to give me that money, and therefore I don't have to buy the house. So what a creative thing that buyers are doing now is they are offering to pay over the appraised price in cash. So again, if you have an offer that has that versus an offer that doesn't, which one are you going to take? You're going to take the less risky one, right? Home sale contingency. So it used to be that if you had to sell your home in order to buy your next one, you could put in a home sale contingency and say, I can only buy this house if I sell mine. Nowadays, we're advising buyers that that's probably not going to get accepted, because again, if the seller's looking at 2 offers, are they going to take one that they have to depend on you to sell their home, or are they going to take the one that doesn't? So as a seller, it's important to know these things, because every one of those contingencies, again, creates a point of leverage for the buyer, creates a negotiating point for the buyer in a time when you don't have as much leverage as you did before. So then with negotiations, so once you're under contract, some points of negotiation are going to be after the inspection is completed. The buyer, if they're doing an inspection, they're going to have the option to come back and say, based on the results of this inspection, I want this and this done, or I want this price lowered, or whatever. And that's going to be a point of negotiation. So your seller is going to help you navigate that negotiation process. They could have an escalation clause, which says, I'm offering this, but if another buyer offers higher, I'm willing to beat that. So that's a negotiation tool. The seller leaseback, we can talk about that. So if you're in a position where you want to sell, but you need some time after you sell to find a property, you can actually option to essentially lease the property from the new buyer for a month or 2 to give you time. So that's a negotiation tactic. And then the appraisal is another thing. Like I said, if the appraisal comes back lower than the agreed upon price, then that's a point of negotiation between the buyer and the seller. So anything you can do to kind of nip these in the bud in advance or anticipate them in advance is really going to go a long way. And that's what I mean when I say bulletproofing the transaction. So if you just kind of leave these to chance, you could find yourself down the line, even though it sold for $20,000 over asking price, you could find yourself back down at what you were asking or less if the negotiations go sideways. So you're really going to want to count on your agent to help you figure all that stuff out in advance and try to pick an offer that has the fewest risks. Okay, I'm going to get to these questions at the end because there's a few of them there. Okay, is anyone here concerned about having to buy after you sell? If not, I won't go into that too much. But if you are, I can talk about it.
How about getting a pre-inspection done? Is that an option now?
Yeah, it's absolutely. So you're saying as a seller?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it is something that's talked about a lot. I personally, as someone who also represents buyers, I wish that it was more common in the marketplace, because so many buyers are at the point now where they feel like they have to waive inspections. It would be nice for them to have that and know what is going on in the property. For a seller, it doesn't help you that much, other than it maybe encourages people to waive inspections and therefore eliminate that negotiation point down the line. But it could also result in learning about things that you didn't care to know about your property that you now have to disclose. So it can be tricky. So if you're fairly confident about your property and you feel like anything that comes up, you're willing to repair it, or you're just okay disclosing it, then go for it. It's a nice thing to do. It just doesn't really help you too much in the long run.
Okay.
It's nice for buyers. I wish everybody did it, but okay. Okay, so let's talk about, has anybody here considered selling without a realtor?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I have, like, before I had my real estate license, my mother was selling our family home, and I figured this is pretty straightforward. It's not rocket science. We could probably just do this without a realtor, save ourselves the money. I think I'm like a pretty smart person, even without the real estate, you know, even before I studied real estate. It's not that complicated. I mean, all of the things that I just went over are pretty common sense. What happens is, as an unrepresented seller, you don't know what you don't know until it's too late, until you realize you don't know it and you're scrambling to figure it out. So that's a big one, is like the risk associated with thinking you know what you're doing, but really kind of fumbling through that. And that can result in quite a bit of time, money, and actual like liability. So if you don't do the proper disclosures, if you don't understand fair housing laws and how to properly market your property, that can be a disadvantage. It's also the marketing. You're just not going to get as wide of an audience as you would if you listed it with a realtor. But in general, in this market, it just doesn't make financial sense. So right now you're looking at, if a price is home properly and you get all the factors that we talked about before, you're looking at selling between 7 and 10% over asking price. What's a typical real estate commission? It varies, but if you're looking at a 6% real estate commission, think about it. That's you're paying for that in just the amount that you're getting over the asking price, not to mention the amount that you were already going to be netting after the sale, right? So why wouldn't you just use that extra to pay the agent, save yourself the time, the headache, and all that, compared to for sale by owner properties, because they don't have that wide audience, they don't have the competition among buyers, and buyers are just not as motivated to make strong competitive offers. So in the end, for sale by owner properties end up selling, the statistic is a little dated, so this might be less now in this market, but they usually sell for 16% less than a listed home. And that's because they don't have that audience, they don't have that competition. And they spend a lot longer trying to sell than a house. So right now you're looking at 3 to 7 days for a listed property, could be several weeks to months for sale by owner, just to make less money, take on more risk, and you're showing the home too. So you're also coordinating all of those showings. Everything that I just said that an agent does goes out the window. That's your job now. So it's also not very fun. Like I said, I tried it. Only 30% of people who sold without an agent say that they would do it again, because it's just not a good time. And it's also not free. So I don't know if you guys know, but the seller typically pays both sides of the commission. They pay their listing agent and they pay a buyer's agent. So if you're selling without an agent, you're getting rid of one half of the equation, but you still generally have to count on paying half of what you were paying before to the buyer's agent. You're also maybe hiring an attorney to review contracts and help you navigate the paperwork, or a title company to do that. So you've got attorney fees. Nowadays, to put it in the multiple listing service or even on Zillow, you have to pay fees for that. Your photographer and your marketing, those are things that are covered by your realtor's payment, but you're going to be paying that out of pocket if you're selling by yourself. It's not free in that if you're underpricing or under negotiating, you're losing a large amount of money with that less competition again. And then if you have any issues with, like if you didn't properly vet the buyer and they have financial issues or can't close for any reason, you're losing time and money there. Same with appraisal issues. So in general, it's just doesn't really make a lot of financial sense. It's not cheaper, it's not fun, and it's very risky. And then Loretta, you mentioned the paperwork can be daunting. So a lot of the problems that people face, and that I myself face when I try to do it alone, is the paperwork, the pricing, staging, the connections with vendors that can help you get things done beforehand, marketing, putting all the pieces in place to get that maximum exposure, providing the proper documentation up front to buyers, navigating fair housing and disclosure laws, negotiating the best price and terms, getting the deposit money. Didn't even think about that. When someone makes deposit money, what do I do with that check? There are laws around what you're supposed to do with that. Picking the best, bulletproof offer. The paperwork, checking the buyer's qualifications, appraisal, and then negotiating after you're under contract. So all of those things are like, when I did it, didn't think about it, and then realized I was way over my head. We finally hired a realtor. It sold relatively quickly and painlessly after that. So just from my personal experience, it wasn't great, but the statistics will also agree with that. And then again, like I said, in this market, people tend to think, oh, I should just sell it myself. But actually, a realtor fee literally pays for itself now. Okay, so just a little bit about going back to, with things going so quickly, what do realtors even do? So can I get a little bit from you guys from this presentation? Do you feel that there's a value that realtors add in this market? And what do you think it is?
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see what Loretta says. I still don't know who iPhone is. I haven't heard much from them. So I'll just go through some of the things on my list here. So knowledgeable, right. So knowledgeable and knowing the ropes. So that's a big one, that's my first bullet point that I have here in front of me, is the biggest value right now that comes from realtors is coming way before the house is even on the market. It's that first consultation that could be months before you list. That's, hey, what do I do? Where do I start? What should I do beforehand? What should I declutter? What should I stage? What should I fix? What's worth it? What's not? So a lot of that expertise, strategy, understanding market conditions, having worked with buyers and knowing what they're looking for, that's a big part of the value. There's also just coordinating the vendors and photographers and things like that, again, well before the property is listed. Understanding what's going on in the home and inputting the data correctly in the multiple listing service, creating a captivating description, making sure the photos really highlight the best features of the home, doing that aggressive coming soon marketing campaign. Anywhere, that could take up to 3 weeks, right? If you decide to do it several weeks beforehand and then funnel everyone into that weekend. And then guys, I will tell you from personal experience, even though a property may only be on the market for 3 to 7 days before it goes under contract, that is 3 to 7 days that your listing agent, they won't tell you this, but they are fielding phone calls, emails, text messages all day, literally all day, day and night, for the entire time. So that alone is a full-time job. And we love it because it means your listing is getting traction. It means you're going to get multiple offers. It's great, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'll tell you, they're definitely putting in the work, even though things are selling quickly. And then of course, when you get those multiple offers, they are reviewing them, they're analyzing them, they're filling in any gaps in information and reaching out to the agents and saying, hey, you know, I need this information to be able to compare it. They're reaching out to the lenders if they need to. And then they're presenting you with the offers in a way that's not totally overwhelming. So I spent an entire day just analyzing offers before. Then once you're under contract, they're keeping track of the timelines in the contract and making sure that you stay within the timelines, and also that the buyer stays within the timelines and that they're not breaching the contract. And they're taking care of deposits. When inspections happen, they're helping you negotiate the, you know, what happens after inspections. They're also helping to ensure the home appraises or contesting it if it doesn't. And then they're coordinating the closing process. And then the buyer's agents, the poor buyer's agents in this market, they're bringing the buyer. So they're showing the buyer your property. They're pre-qualifying them before they even take them there. They are coaching their buyers on how to write competitive winning offers. So they have a big part to play in your home selling and in your home getting the best terms, right? Because they're the ones coaching their buyers what to offer. And then they are negotiating on their behalf, their side of things. Their buyers agents in this market are spending about 3 times as long with the same buyers as they were a year or 2 ago, because it is taking so long to find homes. They're putting in offers on many homes before one is finally accepted, and then they're still doing all that work on their contract. So to answer your question, Loretta, I do think the full commission is still very worthwhile, and it essentially pays for itself in the headache that you're not having to deal with by listing with a realtor. So I'm going to drop or if you guys can scroll all the way up to the top, I put in a link to provide feedback. I would love to hear from you guys to know if this was valuable to you, if you learned anything, and then I'd love to treat you all to, have you guys been to Paloma's? I just think it's cool that they have my same name. I'm not associated with them at all. I just thought I haven't met that many people with my name. So for a restaurant to have my name, I thought it was cool. So I partnered up with them, and they have a little market. They're right on Bridge Street. You walk in on the left-hand side, there's a market. And then on the right-hand side, there's a restaurant. The market has delicious pastries, croissants, things like that. Very good. So I'll treat you guys all to that if you just give me a little feedback. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Mark. I don't know how to copy and paste on it.
Yeah, I put that in for the benefit of the person who came on later.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. All right. So let's go back up to some of these questions. And then if you guys have any more, feel free to ask. Right. Okay. So Laura, you make a really good point about putting in a new kitchen or the master bath. In general, there are very few updates and repairs that the money that you spend to make those repairs, you get 100% of that back. Things like that help things sell faster. They help bring in a larger buyer pool and maybe drive the price up a bit. But it really is case by case whether, again, looking at comparables, are most of the comparables updated, or is there some wiggle room? So it really is case by case. In general, it's not 100% return on investment, but it is an amenity that helps it sell faster. So you really have to weigh what you might get back versus maybe just price. If your home is really outdated compared to others, it's still going to sell. It just needs to be listed at a price that still is of value to people. So, a buyer might come in and say, yeah, I don't mind that kitchen isn't updated. If I'm paying this much less than the one that is, I'm okay with that. So a lot of buyers will say that. There is, in this market, that's the one good thing about this, is in this market, there is a buyer out there, but there still are listings that are sitting on the market or are having price reductions because people are getting a little overzealous and a little overconfident with what they think buyers are willing to pay for it. So it's just about balancing that. And then how dependable are appraisals? I guess my question is dependable for what? So the purpose of an appraisal generally is actually, it's done by the lender. So it's for the lender to know whether the amount that they're lending is equal to the value of the property. So they don't want to over leverage themselves and give you too much money, basically. So for them, they feel it's dependable. How accurately reflects the value of the home in today's market. They generally, you know, I've run across some instances where the property doesn't appraise for what the buyer was willing to pay for it, and that's why you start building in those appraisal gap, you know, paying the cash over the appraisal and things like that. I think appraisers are realizing like the market that we're in, and they're factoring that in to an extent and saying, in general, if a buyer is willing to pay that amount for that property, then that is what the property is worth. What else would determine what a price, what something is worth, other than what are people willing to pay for it? I think that's it for the question. Do you guys have anything else? Oh, we can go back to the making an offer below listing. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure how else I can explain that. I see if you overprice your home by a little, then buyers can make an offer that is lower. I guess I'll just try to explain, when you have multiple buyers offering on a property, if you're an experienced buyer in this market, meaning you've made an offer on a home already, or you've been looking for a little while, yeah, if there are 10 buyers who are willing to go over price, right, exactly. So buyers typically know that that homes are going over asking price. So they know that putting in an offer under asking price, or even at asking price, isn't likely to get accepted. And so that will actually deter buyers from even making an offer at all. If they know that they can't compete, you know, if you knew that you didn't really have a chance at something, most people don't even want to try. You know, it's a lot of work to put in an offer. And it's also a lot of kind of it's emotionally taxing to put in an offer and to be waiting to hear back and things like that. And then in the meanwhile, if you see another house that you can compete on, you can't make an offer because you've already got one out there. So I hope that explained that a little bit. So then that's where overpricing can backfire, because you can get to a point where buyers are scared to make an offer and then nobody makes an offer, or, you know. All right, does anyone else have any questions? I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, lots of great information, Paloma. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, thank you guys. I look forward to hearing your feedback. I hope you enjoy Palomas. It's really great.
Here all along, I thought it was your market.
I wish. No, I'm just a little bit narcissistic, I guess. Would you mind? Oh, here, I figured out how to copy and paste. I just copied and pasted my contact info again. And then just for the sake of.
You still got your computer on?
Me?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, just for the sake of YouTube, Paloma Vila, Keller Williams Real Estate, my cell 512-963-2877. My email, palomalucia@kw.com.